What if someone who passed away could still show us paths we never imagined? My name is Helen Davis. I'm 45 years old. I'm a hairstylist, and I live in Cedar Falls, a small town in Iowa. For most of my life, I was what people call down to earth. I never believed in those things, like prophetic dreams, spiritual signs, or visits from beyond. After all, who has time for that when you spend all day on your feet, washing hair and listening to other people's stories? But what happened to me completely changed everything I believed in. And it wasn't just me. My friends, clients, even my brother, who's a Methodist pastor, fell silent when I told them. Because what I experienced defies any explanation we know. And if you've ever lost someone you loved deeply, maybe you'll understand what I'm talking about. This story began on an ordinary Tuesday. I woke up early, made coffee, opened the salon, like any other day. But that dawn, I had a different kind of dream. A place I'd never seen in my life. A red bridge over a mirrored lake. And he, my husband, who had passed away exactly 3 months ago, was there. And he looked at me, as if he knew everything, as if he was waiting for me to finally listen. And that's where the impossible begins. This story will completely change your view of what happens after someone leaves. And no, it's not just another dream about someone who's gone. It's more than that. It's as if what he began to show me, in dreams, was real. As if he was guiding me to places I'd never known myself. But later, I discovered they existed. I know, it might sound like something from a movie, but what happened next was even more impossible. My name is Helen Marie Davis. I was born and raised in Cedar Falls, a town in the heart of Iowa, where the sky seems bigger than anywhere else. I'm the daughter of Evelyn, a retired seamstress, and Robert, who was a construction worker his whole life. I grew up with 2 other siblings, Edward, older and always protective, and Jessica, the youngest, full of dreams. Since I was little, I was raised listening to country music on the kitchen radio while my mother sewed party dresses, and the smell of fabric softener was the soundtrack of my weekends. Our house had a backyard with wooden decking, a maple tree in the back, and a porch swing between 2 posts. Life was simple, but it had that warmth of home that never left me. I grew up watching my mother transform fabric into dresses, and my father coming home covered in dust and concrete, but with a smile that only someone who loves what they do carries. I learned from them that work is sacred, that dignity comes from calloused hands, and that's what I carried into my life. I graduated from cosmetology school at 18, with a program at the local community college paid for with help from my Aunt Louise. And since then, I never put down scissors, blow dryers, and mirrors. My salon is simple, located in the back of my house, with 2 swivel chairs, a large mirror, and that background music that plays softer than the sound of the ceiling fans. It smells of hair conditioner and fresh brewed coffee. I wake up at 6, make coffee, organize the day's appointments, sweep the salon, wipe down the counters, and when I open the door, here comes Mrs. Ferguson with wet hair and a sharp tongue. My clients are like family. They know my life, and I know theirs. Every gray hair I cover, every bang I cut comes loaded with stories. But if there's one story no one expected, it was mine, with Walter. I met Walter when I was 23. He worked for the city's electrical department. You know those men who come quietly, without much talk, but you feel that's where your heart wants to stop? He had that. A calm way, steady gaze, and a laugh that seemed like wind, light, but that moved everything inside. We fell in love slowly, with eye contact, coffee at the town, square, conversations on the porch. He would pass by the salon every day after work. At first, he just waved. Then, he started stopping to exchange a few words. And that's how, little by little, my heart surrendered. We got married 2 years later in a simple ceremony at First Methodist Church with a reception in my mother's backyard. He was my first and only love. Walter was my opposite. While I lived with my feet on the ground, he lived with his head in the clouds. He read about spirituality, believed in energy, talked about souls, about planes beyond this one. And I laughed. I'd say, "Walter, cut it out. Nobody comes back to tell us anything." And he'd just smile, like someone who knows something they don't need to prove. He left notes around the house, phrases written in his round handwriting. What is invisible is more real. If you close your eyes, you'll see better. I kept them all in a shoebox, sometimes out of affection, sometimes mockingly. But the truth is, even without believing in anything, I loved the way he saw the world. We spent 17 years married. We had our sacred rituals, Sundays with pancakes and orange juice on the porch. And at night, he liked to listen to oldies on the old radio in the kitchen. He always played the same CD, Frank Sinatra. My Way was his favorite. He'd sing quietly, off-key, but with such tenderness that it warmed my chest. We never had children, not by choice, but by fate. We tried for years. We did tests, treatments, made promises, but it wasn't meant to be. And in a way, that brought us even closer. It was just me and him, us against the world. The house had his touch in everything. The chipped mug he always used, the way he set up the porch swing differently than I did, the blue flannel shirt he wore every Sunday. The smell of his woody cologne still lingered on the pillow, even days after he traveled for work. Walter said things I didn't understand at the time. That love wasn't just presence. That true love knew how to exist even when the other wasn't there. I laughed at that, but I remembered. Like I remembered so many things he said, even without understanding. He talked about energy, about souls that find each other in various lives, about signs we don't notice. And me? I thought it was beautiful, but I didn't believe it. I thought it was comfort for those who couldn't handle reality, that everything ended there, with the last breath. That life was this, being born, working, paying bills, and one day, disappearing. Nothing about souls, reunions, or light at the end of the tunnel. But I didn't know that his absence would be just the beginning, because when he left, and when the dreams began, I realized that maybe he was right all along. The last time I saw Walter smiling was on a Wednesday night. He had come home earlier from work, which was rare, and brought cheese Danish from the grocery store. He sat on the porch, looked at the sky that was clear, full of stars, and said, "Do you see that star there? The brightest one? When I'm no longer here? Look at it." I laughed. "What nonsense, man. Are you sick or something?" He looked at me with those calm eyes I knew and sighed. "No, it's just a desire to leave a reminder." We had dinner, meatloaf with mashed potatoes and green beans. He drank his chamomile tea, like he did every night to sleep better, and went to bed before me. I was still bringing in the laundry from the line. The sky was clear, and the wind carried the smell of fresh-cut grass. It was one of those nights when you feel something's different in the air, but you don't know what. When I entered the bedroom, he was already sleeping. Bedside lamp on, blue flannel shirt, the one he always wore on Sundays. Peaceful face, calm breathing. I lay down beside him, touched my foot to his. He was warm, as always. Walter had a body heat that was uniquely his, like he carried a small sun inside. That dawn, around 3 a.m, I woke up to a different sound. A gasp, a strange breath. It wasn't snoring, it wasn't coughing. It was as if the air had gotten stuck in his throat. I turned on the light. "Walter?" I called, but he didn't respond. His face was peaceful, more peaceful than ever. Eyes closed, but his chest, still. My body went cold. My heart raced. I screamed, "Walter!" I shook him hard. His skin was still warm, but there was no response. None. I ran to the phone, hands shaking so much I could barely dial. I called Edward. I called 911. I called everyone. But everything seemed slow, as if time had slipped through my fingers. When the paramedics arrived, it was too late. The doctor was kind, spoke softly, avoided harsh words, said his heart stopped suddenly. Used technical terms I don't even remember right, but all I heard was buzzing. He had passed, there, in our bed, next to me, without warning, without saying goodbye, without one last, "I love you." The living room clock read 3:12 a.m. I remember the smell of chamomile still in the air, the bedside lamp casting that yellowish light, the sound of the ceiling fan turning slowly, as if it too was in mourning. The next day, everything seemed wrong. The sun rose, yes, but for me, it was as if the world had forgotten to tell me it was still turning. The salon stayed closed for a whole week. My siblings took care of the paperwork, the arrangements, the people who came to give condolences. And me? I stayed there, motionless, looking at the door, waiting for him to come in and ask what was for lunch. On the day of the service, the sky clouded over. It rained lightly, that kind of rain that seems more like tears from heaven. People spoke quietly, hugged, said, "Stay strong. God knows what he's doing. He's in a better place." But nothing got through. I saw everything in slow motion. The chapel floor smelled of wilted flowers and disinfectant, and the sound of chairs being dragged cut through my ears. I returned home alone, and that's when his absence became presence in everything. The mug he used, untouched in the sink, the pillow with his scent still fresh, the blue shirt hanging on the hook, the teacup still dirty on the counter. Everything screamed his absence. The nights became eternal. The silence echoed in every corner of the house. I would lie down, but couldn't sleep. Body exhausted, but mind spinning nonstop. Sometimes I'd close my eyes and pretend he was snoring softly beside me, but it was just the sound of the fan trying to imitate life. In the first week, I lost 10 pounds. Couldn't eat, had no appetite, had no desire for anything. Clients called, asking when I would reopen, but I couldn't even get out of bed. The only thing I did was look at the sky, search for that star, the one he said I should remember him by. And it was on one of those nights, exactly 21 days after his passing, that something different happened. I was lying down, sleepless, looking at the ceiling. The kitchen radio, the one only he knew how to work properly, turned on by itself. It played a song, that one, Frank Sinatra, "My Way." The volume was low, but the melody cut like a razor. I got up trembling, barefoot on the cold floor, and went to the kitchen. The radio was indeed on, the red light lit, clear sound coming out. And when I got close, when I reached out to touch it, it turned off by itself. I swallowed hard. I touched the button. Nothing, as if it had stopped working forever. That night, I went to bed earlier than normal. My body was asking for rest after weeks of insomnia. I had chamomile tea, the same kind he drank him, and lay down. And then I had the first dream, different from all others. The transition was strange. I felt like I was still awake, but at the same time, I wasn't. Like I had been immersed in a warm lake where all sounds came from far away. The sensation was like falling slowly into a cotton well. I could still hear the world, but distant. A buzzing began to grow, not in my ears, but inside my head, and with it, a golden light began to form behind my closed eyelids. Suddenly, I opened my eyes, but I wasn't in my bedroom. I was standing in a place that looked like my house, but different. Everything cleaner, clearer, more alive. The light was warm, golden, like afternoon sun hitting white curtains. The air smelled of orange blossoms, the same I smelled when I visited my grandmother's farm as a child. And there, in the living room, was him, Walter, wearing the same blue flannel shirt, hair combed back, like on our wedding day, a slight brightness in his eyes, and that smile, the same as always, the one he made when he wanted to calm me, even without saying anything. "You," was all I could say. He smiled and gestured with his hand, like someone asking for calm. "Took you a while to hear me?" he said, with the same gentle voice as always. I swallowed hard. I tried to take a step, but my legs were shaking. "Is this a dream?" I asked. "It's more than that. It's a meeting," he answered. "But you're not here anymore." He nodded, slowly. "I changed planes, but I've never been closer to you." The environment around seemed to expand. The living room transformed into an open field with low grass, gentle wind, distant trees. It was like being inside a lucid dream, but with all senses heightened. "I felt you," I said with a choked voice. "The radio, the butterfly that appeared at the window yesterday, the porch swing moving by itself." He smiled more. I tried to be subtle. "You were always stubborn, Helen. Don't say that. I'm confused. Is this real?" He came closer. His touch was warm, The smell, the same woody cologne. I felt like crying, screaming, running, but I just stood there, still. We continue, Helen. Nothing ends. What do you mean? Life is just a room. When we change rooms, we don't stop existing. We just change environments. Is this the afterlife? It's an in-between, a meeting space, where time doesn't weigh and love has a voice. I sat with him on a bench that appeared from nowhere, under a flowering tree that had no name. I need to tell you so many things, I said. I know everything. I see you, hear you. When you cry in the kitchen at dawn, I feel it. When you smile, remembering our silly moments, I shine. And why did you only appear now? He breathed deeply. Because only now were you ready to listen. Very strong longing is like a storm. It interferes with listening. I started to cry, sobbing tears like a lost child. He hugged me. His touch was real. His skin had texture, temperature. I could even feel the hair on his arm brushing against mine. I miss you so, so much. And I'm here. I always was. And why these strange places that appear in my dreams? Because I'm showing you the path, places you'll visit, people you'll meet, stories you'll still live. But I don't want to live without you. But you will, and you'll live beautifully, because now you know that I didn't leave. I just changed addresses. He took my hand. The palm lines were exactly as I remembered. You'll find a garden with flowers you've never seen. You'll smell a fragrance and know it's me. You'll hear songs that will make you remember me with joy, not sadness. You'll meet people who will say things I used to say. Is this real? More real than you think. And someday, we'll meet again? He smiled, like only he knew how, with his eyes. We never separated, Helen. We sat in silence for a time I can't measure. The wind swayed the tree leaves. The golden light illuminated his face as if the sun were inside his skin. It's time, he said, getting up slowly. No, stay, longer. Whenever you need me, call me. But how? Close your eyes, listen to your heart, breathe deeply, and I'll be there. He got up, took 3 steps, turned sideways, and, with a gentle gesture, waved. I love you, Helen. Forever and a day more. I love you too, Walter. Forever. I woke up with my face wet with tears. But for the first time in weeks, they weren't tears of despair. The clock read 3:12 a.m., the same time he passed away. The radio was off, but in the air, the unmistakable smell of orange blossoms. After that dawn, everything changed. In the first days, I tried to convince myself it was just a beautiful dream, a way for my mind to protect me from pain. But the signs didn't stop. They just began in a way that made me question everything I thought I knew about life. On the 3rd day after the first dream, I entered the kitchen to make coffee as I always did, and Frank Sinatra's CD with Walter's favorite song was on the counter, out of its case. I swear by everything sacred, I didn't touch it. It had been stored in a living room drawer for months, along with other things of his I didn't have the courage to touch. When I put it in the player, it played exactly the part of the song he sang most. And now, the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. And it stopped by itself right after, as if someone had pressed pause. On the 5th day, I entered the bedroom to change the sheets, something I hadn't done in weeks. And his pillow was turned toward my side, not as if it had fallen, but as if someone had lain there, made a small impression in the foam. The smell of woody cologne was stronger than ever. It seemed fresh, as if it had been applied at that moment. On the 7th day, the kitchen radio turned on again, but this time with the station off the air, a low but constant static, as if someone was trying to tune into something. From very far away, I stayed silent, paying attention, and suddenly a soft voice, similar to Walter's but distant, whispered something I couldn't quite understand, but the sound gave me a peace I hadn't felt in a long time. In the 2nd week, I went to the farmer's market to buy vegetables, the first time I left the house alone since the funeral. While choosing oranges at Mrs. Rodriguez's stand, a man, an elderly gentleman about 70 years old whom I'd never seen, looked at me and said, "Your light is different, miss. Someone from the other side has been blessing you, hasn't they?" I froze. What do you mean? I didn't know this man. He smiled at me, and left, without further explanation. On the 15th day, I dreamed again, but not with him. It was a woman I'd never seen in my life. Gray hair, floral dress, gentle smile. She said, "He left a gift in the nightstand drawer, a gift you haven't found yet." I woke up startled, heart beating fast. I went to the drawer, going through everything: old medicines, broken, glasses, pens without ink. And there, at the bottom, stuck to the wood, was a small envelope. Inside, a paper with his round handwriting. "You'll still see places you never dreamed of. You'll be happy again. I'm waiting for you on the other side of the rainbow." On the 20th day, I saw my first client after the tragedy, Mrs. Martinez, who insisted so much that I finally gave in. When I entered the salon, the light turned on by itself, but only the one over the chair where he used to sit while I cut hair on Saturdays. He said he liked watching me work, that I looked beautiful when concentrating. I felt a tear fall, but this time, it was gratitude. On the 30th day, the most impossible thing of all happened. I received an anonymous letter, no return address, just my name on the front. Inside, just a verse that Walter always told me when I was sad. "We're not made only of flesh and bone, Helen. We are memory seasoned with longing." The handwriting was identical to his. The same slant, the same way of making the A, the same stroke on the T. These signs spread out over the months. They didn't happen every day like in the beginning, but when they came right on target, like a heartbeat inside my chest, and I changed completely. I started talking to him out loud. At breakfast, I'd tell him about my decisions, ask for opinions about difficult haircuts. Sometimes I'd even argue, "So, Walter, is this really what you want me to do? Because if so, give me a clearer sign." And he would. He always would. I started writing down the dreams in a notebook I bought, especially for that. A blue notebook, his favorite color, with a hard cover. It became a diary of meetings. On each page, a message, a clue, a feeling. Today, 6 months later, the notebook is almost full. I began lighting a white candle every Sunday evening. Not for any specific religion. I was never much of a churchgoer. But for connection. It was my sacred moment with him. I'd sit on the porch, with his blue shirt in my lap, and stay there, listening to the wind, smelling the lavender I planted, waiting, and they would come. The signs always came. At the salon, clients began to notice I was different. "You seem more, I don't know, radiant," said Mrs. Cooper. "There's a different energy here," said Jennifer. And I smiled, because deep down, I really was. I started taking better care of myself. I replaced the yellowed curtains with white ones that let more light in. I painted the bedroom wall a light blue, a color he always said looked good on me. I planted lavender in the yard, the flower that appeared in one of my most beautiful dreams with him. I adopted an abandoned kitten that showed up at the door on a rainy morning, an orange kitten, thin, scared. I named him Star. Walter always talked about stars, and that little guy had eyes that shone like his when he smiled. The curious thing is that Star has strange behaviors. Sometimes he stares at empty spots in the house and purrs, as if someone invisible were petting him. Once, I swear, I saw him playing alone in the living room, as if someone invisible were holding the other end of the string. I also started listening to spiritual music before bed. Those mantras he listened to and I thought were weird. And curiously, I started sleeping better. No insomnia, no nightmares that haunted me in the first weeks. I opened a small bookshelf in the salon with books about spirituality, life after death, dreams. Books he had and I never wanted to read. And amazingly, clients started borrowing them. The salon became a conversation point about these subjects. One said she dreamed of her mother who passed away 2 years ago. Another told about a yellow butterfly that always appears on her father's death anniversary. A third shared how she found peace through meditation after losing her husband. And there, between scissors, brushes, and hair dye, an invisible network of sharing was born. Of faith, of reunions that maybe aren't just imagination. Even my relationship with longing changed completely. It stopped being that pain that cuts through your chest and doesn't let you breathe, and became a bridge. a golden bridge that connects me to him in a way I never imagined possible. Today, when longing hits hard, and it still does, I won't lie, I close my eyes, breathe deeply, and feel him. There, in the breeze that enters through the window, in the smell of lavender from the garden, in the loving silence of the night. And today, I'm absolutely certain of one thing. True love doesn't end with death. It just changes form. It stops being physical touch and becomes subtle presence. It stops being conversation and becomes intuition. It stops being look and becomes energy. 3 months after the first dream, my sister-in-law Jessica convinced me to take a trip. Helen, you need to get out of this house. Breathe different air. Let's go to the Blue Ridge Mountains. There are some beautiful places there that will do you good. I didn't want to go. The idea of leaving, of getting away from the places where I felt his presence, gave me anxiety. But she insisted so much, and my brother did too, that I ended up agreeing. Just 3 days, I said. If I don't like it, we come back. On the second day of the trip, we were driving on a dirt road between mountains and valleys that looked more like paintings when suddenly I saw the bridge, the red bridge, exactly like in my dream 3 months ago, over a lake that reflected the sky like a perfect mirror. My heart raced. My hands started shaking. "Stop the car," I asked Jessica, my voice coming out louder than I intended. "Why? Are you feeling sick?" she asked, worried. I've seen this place before." "What do you mean? You've never been here." "I know, but I've seen it. In a dream." I got out of the car with wobbly legs as if I were stepping on sacred ground. I walked to the bridge slowly, each step a confirmation of the impossible. I touched the iron railing painted red. It was warm from the afternoon sun. The wind carried the smell of clean water and wildflowers I couldn't name. It was real, exactly as Walter had shown me in the dream world. Every detail, the bridge's gentle arch shape, the irregular paving stones, even the tree on the left side with branches that almost touched the water. I sat in the same place where we had been together in the dream. The wooden planks still held the day's warmth. I closed my eyes and felt a peace I hadn't felt in months, as if I had finally arrived at a place where I belonged. Jessica came to sit beside me. "What a beautiful place, isn't it? I discovered this little spot in a travel magazine. They say it's one of the most beautiful points in the mountains." I looked at her with eyes full of tears. It really is beautiful, but I didn't tell her about the dream. I wasn't ready to share that with anyone yet. We stayed there for almost an hour, and during all that time, I talked to him in silence. I thanked him for showing me that place, for preparing me for that moment, and especially for proving that our connection went beyond physical life. On the last day of the trip, we were returning to Cedar Falls when we saw a small sign on the road, Historic St. Paul's. Chapel, 18th century, 2 miles. Jessica suggested, "Let's take a look." You always liked old places. It was true. Since childhood, I'd been fascinated by old buildings, by stories from the past. We followed the gravel road until we reached a stone building that seemed to have come out of a storybook. Small, simple, but with a beauty that touched the soul. When I entered, I froze. It was exactly like in the second dream I had with Walter. The old stones covered with moss, the blue, stained glass windows that created light reflections like diamonds scattered across the floor. I knelt in the first pew, my legs losing all strength, and I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since the funeral. But it wasn't tears of sadness. It was tears of recognition, of gratitude, of deep connection with something I couldn't explain. An elderly lady, who was lighting candles near the altar, approached. She had white hair pulled back in a low bun and eyes as gentle as my grandmother's. "First time here, dear?" she asked with a soft voice. "Yes," I replied, wiping tears with the back of my hand. "This chapel has a special energy. They say whoever enters here with a heavy heart leaves with a peaceful heart. It's almost 300 years of prayers impregnated in these stones." I looked at her and smiled. For the first time in months, a real smile. "Yes, I already feel that peace." The lady smiled back. "Sometimes we need to travel very far to find what was inside us all along." And she walked away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I returned home with a different heart, lighter, as if a part of me that was lost had returned to its place. And the signs continued, but now I received them naturally, like someone receiving expected visits. A week after the trip, I was pruning the yard plants when I smelled a different fragrance in the air. It wasn't from flowers I knew. It was sweet, delicate, like jasmine essence mixed with something I couldn't identify. I followed the scent to the back of the yard and discovered that a jasmine vine had sprouted right where Walter used to sit for afternoon coffee. The plant wasn't there before, I'm absolutely certain. And jasmine doesn't just grow like that, out of nowhere. Someone has to plant it. But there it was, green, full of life, perfuming the entire yard. That night, I dreamed of him again. We were in the house garden, only much more beautiful, full of flowers I'd never seen. He pointed to the jasmine and said, "Every time you smell my scent, you'll know I'm nearby." I woke up and ran to the yard. The fragrance was stronger than ever. That's when I understood that the signs weren't coincidences. They weren't creations of my mind desperate for comfort. They were real messages from someone who had found a way to keep taking care of me, even while not being here physically. I decided to tell my brother Edward everything. He's been a Methodist pastor for over 15 years, always the most religious in the family. I thought he'd say they were things of the devil, or that I was needing deliverance, but he listened to me in silence, from beginning to end. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "Helen," he finally said, "in the Bible there are several passages about dreams and visions. God always used these means to speak to people. And if what you're experiencing brings you peace, does you good, brings you closer to love, then it's something good. Evil never produces true love." Those words were like balm to my heart. Having my pastor brother's approval meant I wasn't going crazy, that maybe, just maybe, there really were things between heaven and earth that our limited minds can't fully understand. The salon started getting busy again, not only with old clients who returned, but with new women who came by referral. Many arrived carrying stories of loss, mourning, longing, and they ended up leaving with more than a haircut. Mrs. Stewart, widowed for 6 months, told me she dreamed of her husband every night. But they're not nightmares, no. They're nice dreams. He takes me for walks to beautiful places. While I fixed her hair, I shared a bit of my experience. Her eyes filled with tears, but of relief. "So, I'm not going crazy?" she asked. "No, Mrs. Stewart. You're being visited by love." Claire, who lost her 20-year-old son in a motorcycle accident, cried every time she came to the salon. One day, while I was doing her nails, she told me, "Helen, yesterday I was very sad, the kind where you can't even get out of bed." Suddenly, a butterfly appeared at the bedroom window. Blue, beautiful. It stayed there the whole time I cried, and when I stopped crying, it flew away. Coincidence? I held her hand. "There's no such thing as coincidence when it comes to a mother's love, Claire." That was him saying he's okay. And so, the salon transformed into a place of collective healing. Women who arrived, broken, left with a little more hope. Not because of some miracle I performed, but because they found someone who understood their pain. Someone who didn't judge their silly dreams or their imaginary signs. 6 months after Walter's passing, I decided to organize his things. Not to store everything and forget, but to create a special corner in the house where I could honor his memory in a healthy way. I set up a small table in the living room with some things that most represented who he was. Our wedding photo, the battery radio he took to work, the spirituality book he liked most, a small vase with rosemary sprigs he planted. It wasn't an altar. It wasn't superstition. It was simply a place where I could sit, light a candle, and have my moments of connection with him without anyone thinking it was weird. And it was at this table that one of the most striking signs happened. One night, while I was sitting there, talking to him about a difficult decision I needed to make, whether or not I should accept a friend's proposal to open a second salon, the candle that was burning started flickering strangely. There was no wind. The windows were closed, but the flame danced as if someone were blowing gently. And suddenly, it tilted all the way to the right, 3 times in a row. like a clear yes. The next day, I called my friend and said I was up for the partnership. Today, a year later, we have Helen and Marcia's salon, and it's going so well we're already thinking about a third location. But maybe the most beautiful sign of all happened on the first anniversary of his passing. I had decided to do a simple tribute, plant a white rose bush in the yard. White roses were his favorite flower, and spend the day remembering happy moments instead of being sad. Early in the morning, I went to the nursery to buy the bush. The owner, a lady I didn't know, looked at me and said, "This rose bush here is special. It was the last one that arrived on the truck yesterday. The driver said a blue butterfly stayed on top of the box the whole trip, even here in town. When he unloaded it, it flew into the greenhouse and landed right on this bush. I think this rose has the right owner." I bought the bush with my heart beating fast. At home, I dug the hole in the earth with my own hands, in the place he liked most. While planting, I talked to him as if he were there beside me. "Walter, if you're really nearby, give me a sign that this tribute pleased you." I finished planting, watered it well, and went inside to take a shower. When I came out, an hour later, the rose bush was covered with butterflies. Not one or two. There were at least 15 butterflies of different colors perched on the leaves and branches, a spectacle I'd never seen before. I called the neighbor to see if I wasn't imagining things. Mrs. Campbell came running and was speechless. "Helen, in 40 years living here, I've never seen anything like this. What a beautiful thing." The butterflies stayed there for almost 2 hours. When they left, it was all at once, as if they had planned it. That night, I dreamed of him one more time. But this dream was different from all the others. We were on a beautiful beach with white sand and turquoise blue sea. He was younger, like the day we met. He held my hand and we walked along the water's edge. "Helen," he said, "you learned to listen to me. You learned that love is stronger than absence. Now you need to learn the last lesson." "What lesson?" I asked. "That you can be happy again, not despite my passing, but because of the love we lived. This love gave you strength for everything, including to love again, if you ever want to. I don't want to love anyone else, Walter. Only you." He smiled with that infinite patience he always had. "For now, no, and that's okay. But if you ever want to, I'll be rooting for your happiness, because someone who truly loves wants to see the other happy, always. Won't you be jealous?" He laughed, a nice laugh like old times. "Jealousy is an ego thing, Helen. And where I am, there's no ego. There's only love, and love wants multiplication, not possession." We walked in silence for a while. The sun was setting over the sea, painting the sky orange and pink. "This will be our last meeting like this," he suddenly said. My heart tightened. "Why?" "Because you don't need me anymore to be happy. You've grown, you've healed, you've found your own light. But I don't want this to be the last. It won't be the last. It will just be different. Instead of dreams, you'll feel me in the wind. Instead of words, you'll hear me in music. Instead of hugs, you'll feel me in the warmth of the sun on your skin. And if I get sad, get sad. Sadness is also part of love. But don't get lost in sadness. Use it to remember what was beautiful between us." He stopped walking and turned me toward him. "Thank you, Helen. Thank you for what? For loving me so well. For taking care of me with such tenderness. For making our home a little piece of heaven on earth." I started crying. "I'm the one who's grateful you existed in my life. We'll see each other again, Helen. But for now, live. Live beautifully. Smile, dance, plant flowers, take care of people, spread love wherever you go. And when your time comes, in a long time, I'll be waiting for you on the other side." He kissed my forehead, a kiss I felt to my bones. "I love you forever. I love you forever too." I woke up crying, but it was a different cry. It was a cry of gratitude, of farewell, of peace. The clock read 6:30 a.m. I went to the window and saw the sun rising through the clouds. For the first time in over a year, the sunrise seemed beautiful to me again. Since that dream, I've changed even more. Not because the signs stopped. They continue, just more subtle. A song that plays at the right time. A fragrance I smell when I need comfort. the rose bush that blooms out of season whenever I'm very nostalgic. But I learned not to depend on these signs to be happy. They are gifts, not necessities. I learned that I can feel Walter close even when there's no concrete sign, because he lives inside me now, in the good memories, in the lessons he taught me, in the love I learned to have for myself. The salon is thriving in a way I never imagined, not just financially, but spiritually. It became a meeting point for women who need comfort, good conversation, a shoulder to cry on. I even set up a little corner with herbal teas and a small couch where they can rest while they wait. I started volunteer work at a nursing home on Sundays. I cut the elderly ladies' hair, do their nails, but mainly, I listen. I listen to their stories of lost love, of longing, of children who moved away, and I share a little of my experience that love continues, even when people leave. Mrs. Anderson, 89 years old, told me the other day, "Helen, you have a special gift. You can talk about death as if it were a continuation of life, not the end of it. That brings peace to our hearts." And it's true. Today I talk about death without fear, without deep sadness. I talk about it as a journey, a change of address, a new phase of existence. This doesn't mean I don't miss Walter anymore. I do, especially on special dates. Our wedding anniversary, his birthday, but it's a different kind of missing. It's like missing a city where you were very happy. You'd like to go back there, but you don't get depressed because you can't go back now. There are days I wake up more sensitive, when any little thing makes me remember him. On those days, I don't fight the longing. I embrace it. I get his blue shirt, which I still keep in the closet, and stay with it for a while. I listen to the songs he liked. I look at our photo albums, and I talk to him. "Walter, today I'm really missing you. Remember when we made popcorn on Saturday nights and watched movies on TV? Remember how you got mad when I ate all the caramel corn and left only the cheese flavored for you?" And I laugh alone, remembering these silly things that, at the time, seemed insignificant, but today are treasures in my heart. I also changed my relationship with other people who lost someone. Before, I didn't know what to say. I felt awkward, said the usual prepared phrases. Today, I get close, look in their eyes and say, "I know how much it hurts. Come talk to me whenever you want." And they come. My phone rings constantly with people asking for conversation, advice, or just a friendly shoulder. I became a reference in town for matters related to grief. Not that I'm a psychologist or therapist, but I'm someone who went through the valley of the shadow of death and came out the other side with renewed hope. And that has value. That has weight. The pastor at church, Pastor Johnson, invited me to give a testimony at last year's Memorial Day service. I was nervous, had never spoken to so many people, but I went up to the pulpit and told my story. I talked about the dreams, the signs, the transformation I experienced. When I came down, there was a line of people wanting to talk. One woman, crying, told me, "Helen, it's been 2 years since I lost my husband and I thought I'd never be happy again. Listening to you, for the first time I feel there's hope." Another told me, "My daughter died in an accident and I was angry at God. Now I understand that death isn't punishment, it's passage." These conversations made me understand that my experience wasn't just for me. It was to be shared, to bring light to other hearts navigating in the darkness of grief, and that gives a completely new meaning to my pain. It wasn't in vain. It prepared me to be an instrument of healing in other people's lives. Today, 2 years after Walter's passing, I can say I found a new way to live. I didn't get over the loss. That word doesn't make sense when talking about true love. I learned to live with the loss, transforming pain into wisdom, longing into gratitude, absence into subtle but constant presence. I spent my whole life thinking that everything you couldn't touch was a lie, that only what our 5 senses could capture existed. But today, after everything I've experienced, I believe more in the invisible than in what my eyes see, because it was in silence, in absence, in pain, that Walter's presence became strongest. It was after he left that I understood how much love is a soul thing, not a body thing. I learned that signs aren't coincidences. They are delicate messages from someone who still loves us, just from another place. I learned that time doesn't heal grief. It transforms it. What used to hurt, today, is longing. With the scent of jasmine, what was emptiness became space for connection, and what seemed impossible became certainty inside my chest. The longing continues to be my companion, but not an enemy. Today, it's like a letter that arrives every day. Sometimes, it's a song playing at the right time. Other times, it's the fragrance of flowers he planted. And some days, it's just the wind passing more gently through the curtains. My life changed concretely in all aspects. The salon became a refuge of stories and healing. People come to cut hair and leave talking about dreams, signs, reunions. I started looking into people's eyes, listening more than I talk, hugging longer. I traded the fear of being alone for moments of silence that reconnect me with myself and with him. I started walking in the late afternoon just to see the sky changing colors and remember that star he showed me in the last conversation we had. Today, I have completely different values. I don't run after material things as much anymore. I don't get irritated easily. When something bothers me, I breathe deeply and think. Walter would ask me to be calm. Walter would remind me that this isn't so important. If I could give advice to someone experiencing what I experienced, it would be, listen with your heart. Open your sensitivity to perceive that maybe, just maybe, they continue talking to us. We're the ones who forget to listen because we're too focused on the pain of physical absence. True love knows no boundaries. Not even death can completely interrupt a connection of souls that truly loved each other. It can change the way it manifests, but the essence remains. If you made it this far, it's because this story touched something in your heart. A like helps take this message to other people who might need hope. And in the comments, tell me, have you ever experienced something you can't explain after losing someone dear? Have your dreams ever brought you special messages? I'll read everything carefully and respond personally whenever possible. Remember, love doesn't disappear with physical absence. It changes address, but continues living inside us. And whenever you feel it's impossible to move forward, look at the sky. It might be that someone from another plane is smiling at you, rooting for your happiness, whispering in your ear that everything will be okay. Thank you for allowing me to share my story. I hope it planted a little seed of hope in the heart of whoever needed to hear this. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that touch the soul and ring the bell so you don't miss any new videos. A heartfelt hug full of gratitude, Helen Davis.